All right, so in this first little intro video, we're just going to talk about the difference between identities and equations. And just to get us started, just a quick little example with quadratic functions. So here's a quadratic equation, right? This one is an equation that we're trying to solve, right? So this is an equation. We want to find values of x that make it true. So we're going to find values of x that make this equation true. And so this equation is not true for all values of x. And you remember some strategies from Algebra 2. Hopefully, you could try and factor, you could use the quadratic formula. You would try and find some values of x that make it true. A totally different sort of thing is something that is always true. And so here's another example from Algebra 2. If you do FOIL or a generic rectangle on the left-hand side, you'll see that this left-hand side is exactly the same as the right-hand side. And so this is an identity, and this is always true. And if you want to be real precise, you would say for all x in the domain, because it's technically, if the two sides aren't defined, the equation's technically not true. So it's true for all x in the domain. This parabola is defined for all values of x, and basically the idea of an identity is we can switch back and forth between two things that are the same and use whichever one is more useful to us. So if we were looking for x-intercepts, maybe this one would be more useful. If we wanted to complete the square and get it into vertex form, this one would be more useful. And so we're just moving back and forth. And we've already seen a couple identities from the trig world. The other day we saw this one. We talked about why this is true from the unit circle. So sine squared of x plus cosine squared of x equals 1. So that's true for all values of x. Doesn't matter what your angle is. If you square the sine, square the cosine, add them up, you get 1. Another simple example would be the definition of tangent, basically, right? Tangent is equal to sine of x over cosine of x. And so we've used this as we're working with our special values before to move back and forth. If we know the sine and cosine, we can figure out the tangent. This helped us with the helper graph when we were graphing tangent. So this is another thing that is always true. And so what we're going to be working on this unit is basically things like this, using some basic identities like this to come up with some even more complicated ones that allow us to simplify a wide variety of trig functions. That's it for the intro.